first up here, hopefully you guys all know why you've joined. We're at product office hours. This is our first one that we're doing of the year, but we plan on doing them monthly. So today we're focusing on feedback. So work with us. Hopefully get your feedback after this call because we are going to be doing these continuously moving forward. So want to get better and make them more helpful for you. And first up, as usual, I have the agenda for us. So we'll introduce ourselves first, then we'll get into what we're talking about. So what are quarterly conversations and annual reviews? And then we'll actually jump into 90. So we're not just in the slide deck the whole time and go through our tool and showing you mainly the quarterly conversation and annual review function. And then we'll get into some of the features that we don't have yet, but we're looking to release in the very near future. So that's going to include to-do and measurable charts in the conversations, the people analyzer, having a tab for that. And then we'll also dive into an IDS session. And so with this IDS session, we're going to be just taking any of your questions, comments. Feel free to post them in the chat. We've got Stephen Klein in the chat right now, who's going to be picking those up and putting them onto our issues list. And then we'll go through the issues list at the end. So I don't think we're going to be talking very long. It'll probably be like a 20, maybe 30 minutes tops presentation. And then we'll spend a big chunk of time going through and really answering your questions. So as things come up, post them in the chat and we'll make sure we talk about them during IDS.
Perfect.
So first, introductions. Hello, I'm Christine Watts. I'm thinking I know most of you here. Just because my face and my videos are everywhere. I'm head of product and client success here at 90. And really my role here today is just to guide us through how you're using 90, what we have today, where we're going in the future. And then we've got Jim here, who's our wonderful certified EOS implementer. He's head of implementer success and really doing everything, EOS best practice wise and helping take us through IDS.
Yeah, Christine, thanks for having me on. It's always great to meet some more folks implementing EOS and people using 90 as well. And same with me, you're the reason I'm here because we were so impressed with how well 90 took care of us when we were first starting to implement, and we made it part of our practice for all of our clients. So every one of my clients uses 90. Every one of my partners' clients use 90. They don't even know the difference, and we love the way you and your team take care of us every day. So thanks for that.
Course. And then I'll let you keep going and tell us more about what quarterly conversations and annual reviews are.
Sure. So this isn't one of the foundational tools, right? This is one of the tools you'll get into as you go along after you've been implementing for a while. But eventually you want to get to the place once you've rolled out EOS to the entire team that you have a format for having a quarterly conversation with everyone on your team. And the reason for the quarterly conversation isn't so much to browbeat your employees into doing well, because hopefully you've done a great job making sure you've got people that are fit your company like a glove during the hiring process, but making sure that things are moving forward on a regular basis. Very much like there's a quarterly for the organization in EOS, we have a quarterly for each of the individuals to make sure that, yeah, are they still aligning with the core values? Are they still doing well with their rocks? And are they really fulfilling the roles they have as part of their seat in the accountability chart? And we call this tool, that's the tool down there at the bottom there with a little head and those three words. That is the 555 tool, named so because maybe you have 5 core values, maybe you had 5 rocks this quarter, and maybe you have 5 roles. I don't know, Christine, but we don't tell people to have 5 of those things, but we just call it the 555 because it's fun to say, I guess.
Symmetry. I don't know.
But it's always great to check in with your people on a regular basis. How are they feeling about the core values? How are they doing if they were below the line, or if there's things that they can maybe work on? Having that one-to-one conversation about core values is valuable to making sure that they understand them, that they can embrace them if as much as they want to, and that you can find it in each other to where core values are important. Of course, rocks, being able to get rocks done and making sure that everyone on your team can get rocks done. It's a great chance to teach people about rocks, to make sure they've got the time they need to do their rocks, and they understand the value of how they connect with the priorities of the business. Their rocks should roll up to the priorities of the business as part of your state of the company quarterly conversation you have with everybody in the company. And the roles, once again, it's about asking that question. And we asked 3 questions about the accountability chart. Is it the right structure? Do we have all the right people in the right seats? And do people have enough time to do their job well? And this takes that whole conversation, all those elements that are part of a company quarterly, and personalizes them for the individual. Now, this conversation tends to be pretty conversational. You want to go off site somewhere, and you want to have this open conversation with your employees, just to make sure that you've got good communication, that everyone's on the same page. But then every year we like to have a more formal approach to this. We're actually writing things down. We go a little deeper. We get feedback about how I'm doing as a boss, so I know if I'm doing LMA correctly, leadership management, getting to accountability. And my feedback for you is whether you're making your 5-5-5 happen. And so similar content, similar concepts to the company quarterly and the company annual, where you go a little deeper in the company annual. But really directed at all those people that you love having around, that are part of your organization, and hopefully fit your organization like a glove.
Love that. And so all of those concepts we're going to be going through within 90 themselves. So ideally, like Jim said, every manager in your company is doing this with every one of their direct reports quarterly, 3 times a year, and then have that one annual review. So now I'm going to jump into 90. So I'm going to come back here, and you can still see my screen, right?
You sure can.
Okay, good. So now I'm in a dummy account of 90, and where you're going to find the quarterly conversation and annual review function is in this feedback tab. So I'm going to go through each one of these, and starting with how to create a new conversation. So really, this is going to be on the manager, most likely, to come in and create these once a quarter with their direct reports. You could also have an admin come in and do this for them, but all they're going to do is click create or new quarterly conversation. And then when you come in here, it's going to give you like a little brief description of even what Jim just mentioned. And then first step, give it a title. Are we going over Q4 2020? Maybe it's for the marketing team. Just kind of give it a little bit of context. By default, I'm going to show up as the manager here. But if it's an admin or somebody else creating it, you can, of course, change that to somebody else. And then you're going to choose who are the direct reports, who are the people that are actually getting reviewed here. So you can go through this list and choose, and you can see anybody that's not on an accountability chart seat is actually not going to be able to get selected here, because we're pulling in those roles and responsibilities from their accountability chart seat. And that's a big part of the review process. So we do need to have them on the accountability chart to be selected here. Next steps, I'll actually choose someone's name just as an example, is going to be with that person, their accountability chart seat. If they're in multiple, it'll show up for you to add multiple. And if you want to create the conversation between multiple people at one time, you can. And this isn't saying, okay, all 3 of us are going to be in one. It's still Blake as the manager, and he is just having the conversation with each one of the direct reports here. And so you can see Juanita is a good example in this account where we're actually choosing the individual seat that we need to review for her. So you can't select multiple. You're going to be really focused in that GWC section and make sure you're just doing it for one of their accountability chart seats. And then the due date is really just here as a guideline for when do you want to have the conversation. What's going to happen is once we set this up, it's going to email anybody that needs to fill out these forms, and that due date will be on there just to give them some expectation of when they need to get that done by. The next 2 toggles here are going to control what these direct reports are going to see, what the managees, the people that are getting reviewed, are going to fill out. One, do we want them to evaluate themselves on the core values, GWC, and their rocks? And do we want them to evaluate their manager? So with that LMA questionnaire. So if you turn off either of those, it's just going to turn off certain sections of the review that I'll go ahead and show you now, after we do this final step of actually selecting the dates that we want to review. And this is just a guideline. If I wanted to do Q1 and we wanted to go back to last year, you can just use the date selector and do whatever you need to do within here. And the dates are really just important as far as what rocks do we want to pull in, what performance data do we actually want to see a part of the conversation. Even if a rock is archived, we're still going to be able to pull it in and look at what their completion rate was. So once you've filled all that out, you'll save it. I've already got one teed up here. And once you save it, it'll come on this list. And again, email the person that you're having the conversation with so that they know to fill it out as well. And what happens is you both see this prepare form button, but you each fill out the form separately. So I'm going to log in. I'm reviewing my direct report, Stephen Klein. We can see his information within here. Company core values are pulled directly from the VTO. So we can see those and go through and select the plus, minus, and minus for each of these core values. I can even write some comments here. So underneath each of these sections, there's a little prompt to follow. And it's nice because whoever is logged in, the question will make sense for them. So all of the wording is switched around based on if I'm the manager or the direct report of the conversation. So I can go down, I see GWC, I see the accountability chart he's in, any of the roles and responsibilities he has. So I can fill out gets it, wants it, capacity to do it, just with the yes, no responses here. Again, with some prompted questions. And then you also get to see the rocks that are assigned to them as well. If you don't see any rocks you're expecting to see, maybe try adjusting the due dates and pulling up any new ones there. And so finally, I go through my own leadership and management assessment. So down here at the bottom, I'm actually filling out, am I giving clear direction, the necessary tools, and then the management area as well, and can write some comments. And then, like I said earlier, when Stephen logs in, he's going to see he's actually reviewing me down here. So instead of seeing I am giving clear direction, he's going to see I am given clear direction. So again, always making sense for whoever's logged in. And once we're done, I can either just save my progress here and jump back in whenever I need to. If I'm actually completed, I'll press finish, and that signifies to the other person that I'm done. And if I click on the conversation here, we can see, are they submitted yet? Have they not started? And with the quarterly conversation, like Jim said, it's a little less formalized. It's really just meant to prepare your thoughts before you're in person, before you're diving deep with somebody. So you're not going to see the other person's response in here, unless when you're creating the conversation, you make it formal. So this make it formal toggle I didn't touch on earlier, but what it does is it takes you through the exact same process I just explained with each of you filling out the form. But once you're done, it actually lets you run the feedback meeting so that side by side, you can see each other's responses and talk about those. And that's exactly how we have the annual meeting set up. So the quarterly conversation, the annual review really follow that same structure. So I'll come into the annual review I have set up here. And if we had made that quarterly conversation formal, we would be able to see this start feedback meeting button. So this is unique to the annual review and then also a formal quarterly conversation. And when I click on this, it pulls it up, and this is the one that we've both filled out. So now we can see each other's responses side by side. We've got the list of core values here, and we can see our comments that we've made. And this is all editable. So if I needed to make any changes or add any comments based on what the discussion is around, you can add those in anytime. We've got his accountability chart sheet here with GWC. And then we've got his rock completion rate. Here I'm pulling in the full year. So I've got 2 rocks lined up. And we're only at a 50% completion rate because on track does not mean done. So remember that when you're getting your rocks completed, you need to have those marked as done in order to count towards complete. And so the one unique thing that we do have in the annual review is the ability to add some custom questions. So here you can see just a couple free-form responses. By default, you get 3 of them. So the strengths and key accomplishments, areas that need improvement, plan to get on track. You can either delete those, edit those, or like we did here, just add a new one. And then finally, you've got the leadership, same concept, change these answers, go through comments, and then the management area as well. And then a part of each of these conversations, you can add attachments. So if there's anything outside company related, role related, anything that doesn't quite fit into here, you can always attach it as a document. So you at least have it saved with this conversation. It's part of the file. At the end of your formal meeting, there is this signature area just for each of you to write your names and then go ahead and date it with today's date, really just signifying, hey, we both agree to what's written here, agree to the conversation, whatever those action items or next steps may be that you've documented within here. And then same buttons within here, you've got the save and exit, and you also have the finish option. If I go back here, again, when I click on the conversation, I can see the detail. Has the manager and managee submitted the form? How's the meeting going? And then since we both have submitted the form, we can see our answers side by side. It's nice because before you both submit those, it's not going to let you see the other person's answer. So you're not going to ever be affected by what they wrote before you actually submit yours in there. And the other thing I'll chat about while I'm talking about viewing answers is your permission level. Right now, I'm an owner in this account. I can see everything. I can go into these different conversations that I'm not even a part of and see the answers. If I was just a manager or a managee, I am actually going to see a little notification on this page I can click on to let me know that. And the reason is I wouldn't be able to see other conversations that I'm not a part of. So for example, if I was just a manager, I wouldn't see any of those. I would only see the ones that I am physically in. And
Christine, I think you guys did a great job of having both the pure tools from EOS, but also a lot of the functionality that's really required for companies that already have existing HRIS or HR functionality they have to comply with. So, you know, I've always been very impressed with what you've been working on here. Having a background, one of my former companies was an HRIS company. It's like, wow, this would be really great for us. So.
yeah, I mean, and that's really the idea. We want to give you the framework. We want to give you the right questions asked, but we also want to, you know, add custom ones in there, attach other documents, realizing that everything might be a little bit different. And that's even, so here's the custom question button. So at a global level, if every person in your company, whenever a conversation is created, you want a certain question asked, just put it in here and by default, it gets added onto every conversation. But if it's, let's say, specific to an individual one, before, I'm not going to see it. So it only shows up before you actually start filling out the answers. There'll be a little settings button so that you can change it just for that individual one.
Christine, can you talk about that PDF button up in the upper right-hand corner? There are a couple of questions already come in. We're already right here. So I figure we just go ahead and take it.
Yeah, of course. So the PDF option is great if you are, like Jim said, taking things off site and you don't want to have your computer open at a coffee shop or anything like that. So this just gives you an export of exactly what you see here. So if it's only your answers in there on the quarterly conversation, that's all you'll get. If you're looking at both people's answers, it just kind of formats based on whatever you see in that details area and includes whatever you have in there. So if we ran the conversation and changed any of these answers or made any adjustments, you would see those within the PDF as well. Good catch in the chat.
I know where I was excited to see that button there too. So that's
oh yes.
People love to have that because it's a great way of integrating this data into other systems and have it available in other places. So
exactly. And if this is a situation where, you know, maybe this review didn't go as well as this one did, and there's some minuses here and we need to make it an issue, you still have the more actions button there. So if you did want to turn any of these into issues or create to-dos for the person to go take any action steps after this, you have both those options there as well.
Yeah, from a pure perspective, anyone that didn't GWC their role, it's got to be an issue. There's no question about it that you don't let that go.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, so I think I am done with my showcase portion of this, and I'll jump back into my presentation. And the next couple things I want to get into are some of the things that we have coming soon in the feedback area. So the first one here is going to be on the rocks area of each of the conversations. The formal, quarterly, and the annual is just the ability to see these to-do and measurable charts. So again, only available in the formalized quarterly conversations, then any annual review. And then it's going to be based on the time frame that you select. When you're choosing what rocks to pull in, that's going to affect what to-dos you're having visible here or what measurable data that you're seeing. And so it's for the person that's being reviewed, that managee role. And so you can see the to-do chart looks just like what you would see on the My 90 page. So it's that same idea. What'd you get done on time? What'd you get done late, past due, incomplete? So you're seeing whatever is in that time frame that you picked. And then your measurables are going to be anything that managee owns. You'll be able to see the time frame you pick, just red and green if they've hit the goal on that given week or not. You could choose to view the monthly or quarterly measurables as well. But then anytime you hover over any of those boxes, it would pull up with the goal versus actual there as well, so you could see the number.
This would be a tough conversation, Christine, with the 2% completed on time.
Yes. Should have made myself look better there, huh?
Well, you're nice and all, but yeah.
And this is a look at the actual page. So I just wanted to give you some context for where it would live. You're still looking at the same agenda there. It's just right under the rocks area. So you got the rock completion rate, and then you've also got to-dos and measurables there. And this is just a mock-up I've put in there. So we have the dev team working on it right now. So I expect we're a couple weeks out from testing it internally and then getting it out to you guys.
Fantastic.
All right, next one. What do I have? People Analyzer. So this is another great one. We're actually going to have a new tab on the feedback page for the People Analyzer so that you can review anyone, anytime, meaning you're not really restricted to running a quarterly conversation or annual review and bringing the other person in. It's just a one way. You can fill it out on anybody on the directory, which is great because that includes non-paid users. So you don't have to invite somebody to be a user to actually fill out one of these reviews on them. And so you're also going to be able to see a little below the bar. So down here in the bottom right, you can see I have a little exclamation point. You set up the bar. Maybe I should have gone through this when I had 90 open. On the settings page, there's an area where you can choose, hey, this is how many core values I'm comfortable with having less than a plus on there. And anything that has a minus is just by default going to be below the bar.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so most people will have set their bar at some point. That's one of the things you can review on a regular basis as part of your quarterly to know where your bar is. But it's an important thing to know where the bar is and be able to communicate that to people. Like what are the things we can negotiate with, things we can't.
Yeah, exactly. And so this will be a full process. So like I explained, we've got a main view where you just have your People Analyzer tab. You're going to see everybody's names, very reminiscent of what your directory looks like, but you'll see things right away, like what accountability chart seats they're in, what teams they're on. And then for them, you'll either be able to click on the name or click on new review. And when you select new review, it's going to pop up with this option to complete your People Analyzer for them. So again, choose what seat. The core values come up that are just pulled right from that VTO again, GWC for that seat. And then once you save that, go to my next page, then it goes on to that person's profile. So then you would be able to click on their name. And then here you can see I've got my name, I've got my 2 roles listed, and then you can see who reviewed me, the day, and then whatever the responses were at the given time. Got the more actions button to turn them into issues or to-dos. You can see what's below the bar really easily.
So the chat's hoping that this is going to be ready tomorrow.
Me too.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I want to say definitely this quarter, but I get in trouble when I say definitely. So it's a very high priority to me, and I will phrase it that way.
There you go. Very good.
Okay. And then the next one I debated putting in here because it is a little bit experimental, but I think it's important to mention because I figured I would get some questions on it. Creating a feedback only user.
Great
so
question.
There's been a lot of talk about this internally. The reason I say it's experimental is because whenever we talk about changing pricing and things like that, it's not just a product feature I can put in there. I got to get a lot of team input and we've got to do a lot of testing. But we're hoping to create a discounted user where their only function is you want them to log in and participate in quarterly and annual reviews. So you still want that back and forth of the conversation aspect. You don't just want the one-way review of the People Analyzer, but maybe they're not at a point in the company where they're really owning a ton of rocks or participating in meetings and things like that. So we're not going to let them be assigned any content. They're not going to really access any areas of the system other than really feedback, the accountability chart. And then, really process should be the other one on there because those are the pages that are kind of just open for people to access. And then it will be discounted beyond the $12 per user per month, which is that standard price. So still kind of playing around with the pricing. I hesitate to like give you a number and say it'll be $2, which is what we're playing around with at first, but I said it, it's out there. We'll see what happens. You know,
We're not saying it's going to be $2, except that's what we said.
So
So it's a very low price. The point being that it's really commensurate with how much they're going to be consuming the software. So.
Exactly, yeah. So low barrier to entry. They're going to be using the platform, but it's just going to be less frequently. So we want to reflect that within the price.
Yeah. A lot of people are excited about that.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm glad I included it then. So now it's time for IDS. Hopefully you guys have been throwing questions in the chat already. I see it going off. Stephen Klein has been in there and been adding some issues to our issues list, I believe. So keep submitting your questions, comments, anything via the chat, and we'll keep pulling those onto the issues list. And then don't forget, we will email you this webinar afterwards. So don't feel like you have to write everything down. I'll try and include any help articles or videos, especially anything that we start talking about in IDS. And I'm curious on my time. 26 minutes. That's pretty good, right?
That's great. Well, because I could have been interrupting you as well.
No, it was good. I enjoy being a little more conversational. So what I'm going to do is head into 90. You know what? Before I do this, while you guys are still thinking about some questions and maybe adding a couple more in here, I am going to show you where the bar settings are located. So when you come into the settings area, there's this configuration page. And so down here in the bottom right, you'll see feedback. And this is what setting up the bar is. So determining who's above and below, you're really saying when a person is below. So any minus response, like I said, and then you have this number to choose how many plus minuses you're okay with. And it will give you the context of how many core values you have on your VTO, just so you know that right away too. All right, back to long-term. Cool, actually, let's see. How do we want to prioritize here?
Well, let's see if we can scan some and find some that are easy to knock off. Like I see PDF here, number 6.
Yep.
I think we got that one. So if you did miss that one, that there is a PDF function in there. It does allow for you to create a PDF of the meeting as it would go down. Any other things we should know about the PDF, Christine? Do a difference between the quarterly and the annual conversation PDF function?
No, I mean, it really just comes down to if you don't make that quarterly conversation formal, you're only ever going to be printing out your own responses. So if it's not formalized and you still want to see both people's on there, just make sure each person prints the PDF and attaches it to the conversation.
Right. So the formal one is where you get to side by side. That's the key difference here between those two different functions. Got it.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah. Let's see.
I think there were a couple about email prompts. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. So will email prompts work in the UK? Some others do not. That's interesting, especially with email. So I know with text messaging, that was one where we, I think, are either still working on it or we've figured it out at this point. Oh, and my guy, Rob, nice. Hey, Rob. If it doesn't work, email me or I'll email you after this, because it really should, especially when it's just an email rather than worrying about like text and area codes and that sort of thing. So let's definitely get that figured out if it's not.
Yeah, so the short answer there is if any of the prompts are not working for you, let us know. That's something, there's no restrictions on email prompts for us. So make sure that, and you can always just check on a little happy box in the bottom right-hand corner and let us know where that always works.
Yes. All right.
Yeah, I think we'll have plenty of time to get through all of these. So you can just go down in order, really.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. So each team member needs to have access to 90 for login. So this is a great reminder back to really like that last experimental feature that we're looking at. You will be able to create a feedback only user when we get that out to you guys. that will be a discounted amount. But yeah, if you want somebody participating in one of those feedback conversations, we need to make sure they're a paid user and can log into 90 and get assigned content. So for right now, create the invite for them. We'll have the People Analyzer tab out there where eventually you will be able to just review anybody on the directory.
And Christine, I guess I wasn't sure about this either. So because I have lots of clients who have all of their people in 90 for the accountability chart, but they're not activated, so they're not paying for them. Can I review those people?
Not right now.
Okay.
People Analyzer, you will be able to, but the main thing with the quarterly and annual conversation, since it is so much of a back and forth, yeah, both people are logging into review, which is why we decided to go that People Analyzer route where you can do the one way and you don't, if somebody's on the accountability chart, you want to fill something out for them either way most of the time.
All right. Hopefully that answers the question, but that's great.
Yes, always let us know if it doesn't. So go ahead and post in the chat and we'll be mindful of that to re-add it to the list or open it back up.
The rest of those folks, the somewhere in the $2 range, not quite sure how much account will be the right one for those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have an employee that is in a seat, but when looking at the annual on their end, they can't pull it up. Brooke, not sure about that one.
Well, that's like it's an individual thing to solve, right? That's you want to take that as a ticket. I guess if anyone else is having that problem, but that's certainly there's no reason why that would be, right?
Yeah, there shouldn't be. And you know what I'll do? I'll create a queue for myself to reach out to Brooke.
Nice.
How fun. Yeah, I can't think of any reason.
So handy that way. You can just create to-dos from anything. I love that.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, once you create the conversation, you both should have that edit button to go in and start making changes within there.
If they're a paid user.
If they're a paid user, exactly. Let's see, do the people see the conversation notes right when they're done, or are they held until you have the in-person meeting? That's a great question. We actually release them right away right now. So as soon as each person presses submit on their form, they're available to view. So you don't have to wait for the meeting to see them, but you aren't allowed to edit your responses. So it's not like I could go see what Jim wrote and then change what I wrote because of that answer. Essentially, once you press submit, you're locked in. So you can't make any changes. So you may have the information, but you won't be able to edit.
Yeah, so obviously there's ways of playing around that, but let's be frank here. The notion of, I mean, you're facing that, you asked that question probably because it's going to be a challenging quarterly conversation, right? And just go into the danger, my friend. It's rip the Band-Aid off. It's going to be hard. Let them think about it a little bit. If you love them and you really want to try to make it work, then you're going to give them a chance to think about it. And hopefully what you've said is both honest and loving, and they'll react accordingly. So. And if not, then maybe they're no longer a core values fit, right? Right, Christine?
Yep. Right people, right seat.
Right people, right seat. You got to have both.
Yeah. Let's see. I already read that one. Move on to the next. Title of Managee be customized to something different. I wonder if this is the same person I talked to, but somebody else asked me that too. They preferred the word like direct report or some other type of word there, since Managee, it's also confusing because it's the same as the role in the system. So it's kind of, same words duplicated, right. But I've been thinking about that one a little bit recently. So I don't have an answer for you.
You take it under advisement, but right now you can't. It's baked in. But perhaps there's some other verbiage. Thanks for the suggestion.
Yes, always appreciate the feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly. Yeah, new stuff, man. It's going to be 90% there.
Yeah.
No more.
90%. Is there an option for a salary review, or was it actually finance review? You can ask this in the custom question. So I would say add a custom question and put a salary question in there. But Jim, you might have some feedback as far as, I think I remember salary or bonuses and that sort of thing doesn't usually come up in these. Is that right?
Right. I mean, it's not purely discussed. It's not something we would necessarily go into. Hopefully what you've been able to do is bake all your compensation and reward systems into the things that go into the 555. You've been able to completely embrace the EOS-iness of your business, and everyone is going to be properly acknowledged either on a way that's completely objective, or as part of them fulfilling their roles, their rocks, and their alignment with the core values. So there isn't a specific, what we're not trying to do here is replace more complex salary review processes, which have sometimes other things involved in there. But hopefully, for a lot of folks, if you've been able to completely embrace EOS, completely make EOS the basis for how you comp and how you would reward, then it would be a natural extension of what happens here.
Yeah. So in that case, add the custom question, have like the comment back and forth and discussion around it. And then anything outside of that, you may want to have your separate, let's talk about your salary kind of meeting that might be a little bit different.
Yeah, because sometimes those ones specifically you want to have HR represented as opposed to just your thing. But Rich, if that doesn't answer your question, you had a different thing, you feel free, because I don't know if we really nailed what the question was. So if you want to raise your hand, we'll be happy to have you step in and for some redirect question here.
Definitely.
I was just leave that one unchecked until we get this. Maybe Rich will come back.
Okay, I will do that. Let's see, will personal to-dos be tracked in the new measurables? Oh, in the charts, I think is what this question probably is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. I don't have them in there right now. But maybe that's, on all of those charts, there's kind of those toggle on, toggle off, change the view options. So that might be a good idea to put on there really as an optional thing. I know a lot of, I use my personal to-dos for more of a, send an email, do this, do that, less I want to report back to the team on it. So,
yeah, I mean, let's be really clear. I mean, that on the to-dos that are part of the pure EOS implementation are your to-dos that are things that you're taking on accountability for to the team that you're in. So at the L10 that you're in and you get a to-do, you're accountable to this team to deliver that. That isn't necessarily, although clearly we have the personal to-dos as part of how you manage your work every day. So you've got more reason to be in 90 every moment of every day, which we love, right, Christine? I'm in it all the time.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where we're at. I mean, it'd probably be great if you could do that, right, as an option. That's what you're saying, Christine, is maybe that could become an option.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a big, how do you want to see the number, are you going to see a shift when you include the personal or not? I would probably make it a toggle on option rather than giving
or maybe a separate chart, a personal to-do commercial.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll create a to-do for myself on that one as well, look at this.
Well, I'd love to hear more about if people have standards for how they're using 90 to-dos. Like I said, the pure EOS nature of it, there's no reason for personal to-dos. That's, I guess, a whole nother thing. 90 becomes a different tool set when you're including personal to-dos. So we'd love to hear more about how people are using those. Michelle, if you want to share.
Yeah. Let's see. Are you suggesting do a quarterly conversation early in a quarter to be always reviewing how they did in the previous quarter? Jem, I'll let you take this one, what you see clients doing.
Sure. Gosh, this is really part of the snowflake nature of every business that we talk about, where how people think about their quarterlies and whether they happen early in the quarter, where we're looking at last quarter or right at the end of this quarter to see how, depends on whether where you want to be in your financials around all of that. Very much the same thing with how you want to think about your quarterly conversations. I mean, ideally, you're looking back at a period of time that's well understood, so you can bring those rocks in, so you're bringing those and how well they've completed those things. So you've got some, and you probably have some measurables and things like that also accumulate over the quarter. And that's why we're going to bring those in, because chances are the part of the five that's your roles are probably also depicted in how you've done with your scorecard measurables over that period of time. So great to have a completed quarter done and just sit and to be able to report on, how did we do? So that's really, there isn't a pure implementation of it, but that certainly is a way that I see a lot of people do it once they're done, once they've gotten through their, the quarters when they start having quarterly conversations.
So you see it more lining up with when is your team quarterly, like as a leadership team, and maybe try and make it for right after that.
It could be right after that or right before. It's really how you want it. Because the thing is, bring those things together gives you in that time, that mindset of working on the business rather than in the business, and that chance to like seal in all the learning from last quarter as we bring it into the future quarter. It's very much the same kind of mindset you want to bring to these quarterly conversations. It's like, hey, we've got zero chance of changing the past. All we can do is change the future. So let's make sure we've taken forward all that learning from the past quarter, and then we can apply it in the future quarter as we go forward.
That's great advice. And it sounds like the same can be thought of if you have multiple teams, you've got a lot of managers, like try and make sure they're all doing them in a, 1-2 week time frame, whatever it is, so that you're all reviewing and going through the process.
Because what you want to do is release everybody to go start working back in their business, part of that 90-day cycle, just doing what they need to get done. And then you come back up for air and you look around and make sure everyone's fine. So
great. That was a good question.
Yeah, it's really good.
All right, we've got another one for you, Jim. Let's see. Best practices for managers who have 30 to 40 people reporting to them. They're not all listed on the accountability chart and or do not have an email. Any suggestions how to accomplish timely quarterly reviews for that many people?
It's a tough one, right? I mean, regardless of any system, whether you're talking about the management operating system like EOS or a piece of software, it's having that many direct reports is a tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
We certainly, there are HRIS systems that help manage these kinds of things, like ones that are really dedicated to things like grocery stores or retail, where you don't necessarily give them an email or have any way of getting a hold of them really, outside of them showing up for work and punching in.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of people. I mean, we would, in a pure EOS environment, we'd say, gosh, it's going to be really hard for you to have a way of answering the 555 questions about that many people, right? So you're really pulling back to just operating on data, and to maybe treat them as teams, so that someone could, if you want to take advantage of the part of 555 and the quarterly conversation that is about me saying to you as someone I'm managing, I'm interested in your success. I want to figure out what about this job could make you more successful, so that I have a plan for you for the next quarter, for the next year, for the next 3 years. There's something like the same way to think about the business. Then it's going to be hard for that person to do that regardless. But quite honestly, the format that Christine's created here in that PDF, just taking a blank one and being able to fill out that information for folks, doesn't help us out at 90, but it might help you out here. And it's completely fine to think about it that way. Just following the pure format of understanding what the questions are and how you want to have those conversations. But I've had that many people report to me in the past, and I don't think I was a very good person with all those people. So hats off for trying. But I would, and in session, I would always say to someone, gosh, that's a lot of people to try to really understand whether they're doing a good job or not. Let's think about teaming those up. That would always be my guidance to see, I don't know, but it seems like that would be a hard one because you'd spend all your time doing feedback.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a lot of people. I think the PDF suggestion is a great one. It's also hard because if they're not on the accountability chart, maybe they are still in a seat, but you definitely want that seat aspect to know what their roles and responsibilities are, so you can do the GWC aspect. But I wonder if the People Analyzer tab that we're adding solves this problem too, because you can put somebody on the directory. They don't need to have an email. Right. So at that point, you would be able to review all of those people through that one-way People Analyzer type review. So that might be another solution.
And here's one thing I want to offer one more thought about that. When we talk about giving someone a negative review for something in particular, and this is true for positive reviews, but most certainly for negative reviews, whenever we suggest that you talk to somebody about something, we want to not just say, oh, you were bad at this. We want to be able to offer 3 examples, it's real life examples for this is an example of where you didn't actually exhibit our core values or this core value. Hey, I don't think you really are, all about the color blue. Here's the 3 examples where you didn't wear blue. And like,
Yeah.
then that would be, that it's going to be hard to do that with 30 to 40 people, is to really be able to give meaningful feedback like that. Because that way it's not personal. The part of the power of the quarterly conversation, the 555, is how it isn't a personal attack ever. It's really about just talking about what is, and honest and open conversation about whether this is working or not. And that's where ultimately in EOS, that's how we would say you want to have that manager-managing relationship, and you want to have a structure that supports that. So leave it at that.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, definitely let us know if we can elaborate any more on.
Yeah, if we didn't
any
answer
of
your
those
question, let
topics.
us know for sure.
Yeah.
But otherwise, and we did hear back on the salary review. We got a solved on number 8.
Perfect. Check it off. Let's see. Will the LT
Leadership team be able to use this without the employees seeing the results in the beginning?
Yes, because most likely your leadership team is those owner admin roles. So most likely the seats below the leadership team are probably a role speaking to their directory and their permission in the system, a manager or a managee. And so those 2 roles, they can only see the conversation that they're actually a part of. I could see everything. I could see other people because I'm an owner in the account, but anybody else that logged in wouldn't be able to see only but a review that they're actually a part of. So you do have that permission level really pre-baked in here too.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin makes a good point. There's a lot of, we're trying our best to make sure that the VTO, other parts of what goes on, are only seen by the people that are appropriate to see. And if you ever have circumstances where it doesn't seem to match with what you think is appropriate, rights and permissions and visibility, certainly let us know. And because we're trying to accommodate everybody's thoughts about how that works.
Yeah.
But although the VTO, everyone should know about. You should be telling everyone about your VTO.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
All right. Props on the people in Iser. Thank you.
Yay.
We're excited to get that out.
Yeah, that's great. That's great work, Christine. That's going to be amazing.
I'm very excited for it as well. And we got a new to EOS. Great. So ROC is only 90% complete. It didn't quite hit the measurables that were defined, or probably milestones too, at the beginning of the quarter. So ROC shows up as 0% complete at the end of the quarter.
Yep.
Then if we aren't making the last 10% into the ROC, next quarter it stays that way. Jim, I'll let you take this one because that concept of what do we do with a ROC that's not done, I think is important. And I think we want to see it as not done. That last 10% really sucks, but you got to own up to
it. It does, and hopefully you won't fire anybody over being 90% done at their ROC, especially because here's the thing. What we're trying to do that is get everyone better at predicting, right? Predicting what they can get done in that 90-day cycle, predicting what kind of support they need, knowing when to ask for support to get the ROCs done. So that's that's the outcome we're trying to get to. So we're getting all the way there. One of the things that we see done a lot, and we do this at 90, by the way, is if you are a to-do away from to done, right? Something that could get done in the next week or maybe 2 weeks at the outset, then you get to call the ROC done. It is done. You take the to-do, and holy mackerel, you better make that top your priority to get it all the way there. If it's not going to be completely done, then it's possible that I didn't size the ROC right. I didn't prioritize the ROC right. It wasn't the right ROC to begin with. And all of these things you want to learn from the ROC session. You want to be able to say, we didn't get it done. Why didn't we get it done? And I say we, especially if it was a company ROC, it's all of y'all's. Y'all were there every week looking at that ROC proceeding or not proceeding. The person that had the ROC should have said it was off track at some point. If they didn't, that's their learning opportunity. But as team members, if it's a company ROC, if it doesn't look like it's going to get done, you probably should ask the question, are you sure you're on track?
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's what we want you to do. We want the leadership team all to be involved and understand the company priorities of the company rocks enough to be able to participate in determining whether they're on track or not, and then to jump in to make sure they're done, because these are the company priorities. Now, if you're on the leadership team and you've got a personal rock, maybe a department rock, same thing goes for you and your department. You've got, everyone should have some visibility and some ability to come in and help you with that. So take the lump on the 0% complete,
Yeah.
unless it is a to-do away from being done. And then learn from it, and then take a new rock the next quarter to go fix it up, or just make sure that everyone understands why it wasn't done. And that's okay. No one's going to give you, we say it was just a winning quarter or a learning quarter. It's okay to have a learning quarter. It really is. Especially because you're going to be so much better the next quarter. I talk about this with people a lot. People that have some failures in their lives are the ones that are going to be the most successful. That's been shown. Most successful CEOs have had devastating failures in their world. Without that, you don't really know what the downside of risk is. So, take the hit, smile, sing kumbaya, and move on to the next quarter.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could honestly do a whole session around rocks.
Absolutely could. I mean, there's a lot of, if people ask about rocks all the time, and it takes time to get really good at it. Don't beat yourself up. If you're new to EOS and you haven't got your rocks yet, join the club, man. Every client I've ever coached through rocks, the first couple of quarters, they're like, wow, it's really hard to get my work done and also work on my rocks. I said, yeah, because you got too much to do.
Yeah.
you gotta delegate and elevate. So we'll talk about that too. Oh, we got some more.
We do. Yes. I was informed to refresh. So I'm here now.
All right. Got it.
But yeah, I think last thing on rocks, I think that was a great question, especially as a reminder, when you are finishing the quarter, make sure you archive the incomplete rocks. So there's a button that lets you archive all your rocks, archive them even if they're not done. And if they're not done, you just move them to the long-term issues list and see if you would like to reprioritize again. Yeah. And the main reason for that is so it'll show up on these conversations as not done because you want to talk about it.
Yeah, well, also because you want to make sure one thing that happens quite often is that something you thought was a priority last quarter, and if you revert it to a long-term issue, and if it might be a rock for this next quarter, maybe it's not this high a priority anymore. You've learned from it, and you're able to realize that wasn't what was important. Something else is important, and that's a great thing to learn.
Still valuable.
Still valuable. All right.
All right. We make the People Analyzer part of our quarterly conversations. Any possibility that the People Analyzer results will be added to the PDF printout aspect of the quarterly and annual. Good news is it's already there. It is the core values and the GWC section of each of those conversations is all your People Analyzer is. So this question makes me think, hey, we want to make sure that we can view this person holistically. We can run a quarterly conversation, we can run an annual review, we can run a People Analyzer and still see all of those results together, which is exactly what I want to work towards once we get this People Analyzer tab out. So
the People Analyzer is a subset of those other things. It's just those two aspects, the core values, fit, and GWC. So that's why you can do it anytime. Whenever something comes up, it's like, hey, is this, and you ask the question, is this person right people, right seat? That's how you answer the question. So
exactly. So already in those conversations, the new tab will give you the extra ability to run it whenever, and then we will definitely make sure that we are giving you a whole version of a person and that you could click on a name and see all of their responses later this year. So we'll definitely get that on the list too.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Let's see, when we are completing a rock, I don't see where I can set the completion date. Is there an option to change the completion date, or is it always going to automatically be the date you clicked when complete in the software? So you can set a due date. I'll actually go in and create a rock right now. So when I'm creating a rock, you've got the due date right here. So that defaults to 90 days out, and then you can change this if you needed to adjust in any way based on when your next quarterly is.
Which is what it should be.
Yes. Yeah. So go ahead and adjust it with that due date function, and then it does track when something is marked as done or completed in the software. So that's just based on the date that you change that status. So that you can't
Yeah, that's a
adjust.
timestamp. That's just a timestamp. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Feedback on implementing quarterly conversations. We are newer to EOS, started implementing in February last year. 9 locations, 8 franchises, companies relatively remote with multiple locations, navigating, changing our review process to the quarterly conversation, and has been challenging to communicate. All in all, we want to hold them accountable for the core values and rocks, et cetera. But with this new process, getting clarity on starting implementing with upper management, the way down to hourly employees is a tad confusing and feels like an uphill battle. So this is a good question around like, what's the best way to start this, Jim? Tell us a little bit about how companies get
Yeah.
this going.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways that people, EOS does not have a pure methodology for doing a rollout, except for to say at your very first state of the company, you're going to do your core values speech. Outside of that, there's a lot of different variants in how things are done. And certainly in QSR, I mean, you've got a lot of people that are, I don't want to say this in a pejorative way, but are tangentially associated to the company, right? They're part timers, or I mean, I don't know your business model particularly, but I know very familiar with this area of the world, and getting everybody to the point where they have embraced EOS enough that they know what the heck we're talking about with this language does take time, and it is just time on task. It's a way of baking it into other things that you do. So if you do nothing else with everybody except for drop them into a quarterly conversation, and they were nothing else about the VTO or nothing else about this quarterly state of the company, then yeah, it's going to be a real uphill battle because it's a whole new language to learn. You've got to teach them that common language that this is how we operate, this is how we talk about things. This is, what does it look like to take a rock? What are your measurables for the week? I mean, it isn't a good place to start by just looking at that from a quarterly conversation where it's, hey, you're being judged at your adherence to something you barely understand. So doing a more formal rollout where you're actually using what the heck is EOS or some other kind of digest that they can all understand the language, and then putting it into all the rest of how you do what you do, and then judging whether or not people really understand this stuff, so you can actually speak EOS to people and they know what you're talking about. Because they don't, when you get all the way down to the bottom and you've got your busters and stuff, I mean, they don't necessarily care about, they aren't going to necessarily, hopefully they do, but they're not necessarily all going to be naturally engaged at the level that you want to go figure it out on their own. You've got to have to bring them along. And that's, part of the problem with running a, QSR type business.
Yeah, I think the context that you mentioned, having that context before you just jump right into the quarterly is a great point. I actually just chatted with a company last week, Hunt a Killer, I think it was. They had this great idea where they were sending out teaser emails once a week, so that they were learning like what a new topic was every week, and then they did their big EOS rollout meeting. So it was kind of like a fun way to get people engaged, and then they showed them what their big, VTO, what their rocks were. So having that EOS rollout and then getting into department by department, what those quarterly conversations looks like.
Yeah, and getting each of the locations involved in an L10, their own L10. I mean, here's the thing: the upside of getting everybody engaged and feeling like they're on a train that's going someplace as opposed to a job that they're just grinding through, it's huge. If you get people really engaged in the way that we promise with EOS, all the way down to your busters, it's really afterburner time. So it's worth it doing more than just embracing the quarterly conversation, but really helping them along that process and teaching them how to operate better within every business.
Yeah.
That's a great one. Thanks, Alex.
Is a really good one. And we're at 4:00 right now. I'm happy to stay on and keep answering questions. Like I said, this is our first one. So obviously we've got the learning curve of figuring out what time even makes sense. So I'm happy to stay on and keep doing these. And then if anybody has to drop off, we at least have the recording. You guys can definitely stay on and keep participating. So Jim, how are you doing on time? Are you good?
We could let's do some more. Let's knock some more of these out.
Okay, cool. Activate and deactivate accounts only during quarterly and annual review periods. Throughout the year, will their information be deleted? Tricky way to go around the system. We never delete anything. So yeah, you're more than welcome to add and activate and deactivate people whenever you need to. You would essentially just, pay for the period that you use them. So that's definitely an option.
More power to you.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of work, but yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's always a thing with SaaS companies. There's always like a little way to kind of trick it around a little bit, but you be you and survive, and hopefully eventually it's like not worth it and you just want to pay your
Yeah,
all year long.
you go for it. Let's see, when you create a new item, what's the difference between the user picture and the who line? Oh, so that is specific to an issue.
Okay.
So you won't find that anywhere else. You're really trying to address if the issue is with a person, a department. So I'm bringing it up, I'm the owner of it. And then who is saying, who am I talking to, really?
Yeah, hopefully that's clear. It's really and issues, obviously are anything that you want to, it could just be asking a question. I need to know this from this person and I need to put it in this place, especially if you're talking about departments where you don't necessarily talk to each other on a regular basis. You can say it's a great way to broadcast that.
Yeah. Testing the quarterly conversation is a great question. Essentially, you need to get a buddy. So pick somebody on the team that will come along the journey with you. That way you guys can, maybe you want to set up a conversation where you're the manager and you're the direct report and you guys can look at each other's screens and see what it looks like, because to your point, I can't really complete one on my own. So you need to have that person there who, when you create it, they can look at their screen and see what it looks like, and you guys can test that way.
And you can add people that aren't necessarily directly connected to you on the accountability chart, right? You can, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anybody, yeah.
Yeah. So there's no restrictions around like the role they have and being able to choose them or where they are in the accountability chart. Just get the person you sit next to and have them go through it with you.
There you go.
You can delete it at the end. So just click on it and use the more actions button to delete it when you're done. So there's no harm in going through and creating a test one. Let's see, presentable document, like a PowerPoint we can use to communicate the VTO to the organization. We also have the ability to black out some goals or rocks from the presentation due to confidentiality. The blacking out part I hadn't thought about. The VTO does have a PDF button on it, and another sneak peek thing that we're having test right now that we're launching is being able to rotate the VTO. So we found that in portrait mode, you can actually fit a ton of information. So we would let you choose between landscape and portrait. So that is a PDF button, just like you see one here, just on the VTO page. So if you head over there, you can share the VTO that way. And another great thing to do, I'll just click over here, is there is this view leadership VTO option when the leadership team has that turned on. So this is a toggle. You can turn it on and choose, do I want to share this with everybody in the account? If you do, turn it on. And then when you're on those other teams, they can see the leadership team VTO while still maintaining their own. So if I go back to my product office hours team, I could click on this and still view the leadership information.
Yeah, and it would be great to hear what kind of stuff from a confidentiality thing you want to leave off. I mean, certainly there is a button on Right People Right Seat issues that you can click, so those don't show up, right? And typically those wouldn't be necessarily company rocks anyway.
Yeah.
But you can actually, that's another way to keep that, that obvious part of confidentiality in a pure system where there's no technology. We just put our PRS and account on the long-term issues list. We wouldn't put names, for instance. So, and that would be how we'd handle that, and we'd keep a separate list of the.
That's a great point. Yeah, on the leadership team, any of your long-term issues, they have to be made public. So they do not share at all unless you say, I am okay with other people seeing this. So you get that pre-baked in here. You have some privacy, since the issues is really the one, iffy area if you'd like to share those or not.
Yeah, from pure perspective, we would, I mean, hopefully everything else, I mean, what we would teach is that everything else on here needs to be communicated to everybody, except for some of the long-term issues, which would be things for, I mean, and maybe if that's not where you have things you have confidentially about, let me know. But I think that's covered. You know, you get to black it out yourself by making it not even exist.
Right. All right.
Oh, the other
Well,
thing, do we want to talk about what's going to happen in Dash around the state of the company, or is that too new?
you know, I hadn't even touched on Dash with anybody yet, so it felt too new.
Okay. But
But
we have a presentation of the VTO coming. Stand by.
yes, yes, there will be a new dashboard reporting area, a free add-on through a partner company. And so that'll give you actually dashboard reporting on every aspect of 90. That includes the feedback area, so you can see how many people have run conversations, if they were done on time, like what, you know, who's above and below the bar. You know, so a lot more analytics behind the stuff you're really doing on each of these pages. And so through that, we're trying to create some presentation models to allow you guys to share and communicate a lot easier.
Right.
Let's see. Walk through how to add custom questions in the regular feedback form, both quarterly and annual. So the custom questions right now are unique to the annual review. We will be adding them to the quarterly for ones that have formal turned on. So that's not here quite yet, but we will be adding it there. So for right now, you won't see any custom questions on the quarterly until we make that change. But on the annual review, if you come over here next to new annual review, formal conversation settings, click on that, and these are your questions. So it's always a free form response. You don't have the ability to let people select anything. You're really just saying, you know, define what the question is, and then what do you want the sidebar to say just as the menu item. So if you want to click on this, it gives you a little overview of what the sidebar link is. But you can always reset to the default if you ever added anything or change any of the existing ones, remove them. So that's your adding and removing.
And do you get, is it just 3, or do you get as many as you want?
You can have as many as you want. So you should be able to continue to add on to here. So it just labels them
Forever
5,
and ever,
6,
yeah.
7. Yeah.
You can make it a SAT test, basically. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, maybe don't get too long there, but teach their own. And then, like I said, I don't think I'll see it on any of these because all of the conversations have been started. But if you would have a settings button on the individual conversation to change the questions there as well as soon as you create it, as long as neither person has started filling out their forms yet.
Great.
All right, let's hit long term again. Perfect. Make personal to-dos optionable for feedback, not always appropriate for rocks. Definitely agree with that. Yeah, I think we touched on that earlier, where if we added them in, just make it optional.
Yep.
Also agree with this. Mobile app would be nice to have. Everything is mobile responsive right now, so you could pick this up, and even when you're answering your quarterly conversation forms, that should all be formatted so that you can fill that out real time on your phone as well.
Yeah, it actually works very well on mobile apps. Just the only thing you don't get is like that would be good with the mobile app is the notifications and things like that come up in your notifications view. So
yeah, definitely.
So
we will definitely develop it. I have almost no promise around time frame, but yes,
well, it's
agree, it would
internal
be great.
battle that we have about whether it's appropriate or not. Whether you
It is. But yes.
But for those, there are some very specific things, functionalities we'd like to get to that we need to have the app to make it work. So
yeah. Let's see. Don't seem to be able to change the due date on the quarterly conversation if I accidentally created one with the wrong date. Yes, right now you do have to delete it and create a new one. But I can probably get that adjustable on our list. Maybe I'll have that fixed for us when we release the charts too. Been meaning to make them get to that. So that's a great call out.
Thanks, Crystal.
Yes. Another ask for a presentable VTO. So yeah, interesting point. I think we already covered this one.
Yeah, there's new stuff coming. There's already some options, but there's new stuff coming as well.
Yep, definitely. I
Um,
think that portrait mode will be really interesting for people to see how much more fits on there. Let's see. Teaching rock owners to establish realistic milestones and
so this is how I coach especially my early teams when they're first setting their rocks, is I tell them to create milestones for every week. So when you're doing it, when you're going and you're in focus day, you're creating those your kind of starter rocks, and you've only got, say 8 weeks before they're due at the end of VB2. Uh, just create eight milestones. So because you're used to having these get done every week, and you're not going to get too far behind. You're still going to be wrong, by the way. You're still going to say, okay, that wasn't the right chunking of the 8 weeks. But that's part of the learning process. It's part of how to teach you how to get better at predicting what the milestones are, when they need to happen, and how many of them are really going to help you keep going. Because one of the things you can also do with the chunking of milestones is that you're allowed to assign the milestones to somebody else, right? So as you get closer and closer to it not being done, someone can jump in and say, let me take that. I can do that part for you. So one a week is my beginning guidance for people. Start there. If you get great at it, you can go with less, but going with more is even better. You've thought through the project more deeply, and now you've got smaller chunks you can now share with more people.
yeah, I mean, you probably want to make sure it's really smart before you start thinking about milestones.
Right.
What are you really doing? What's really the end goal? And then that might help you work backwards a little bit better too.
But it is, it's really challenging for people if they haven't been good at project management or that kind of thing to learn this. But it's an important thing for everyone in the company to learn, is how to have a bigger project, break it into smaller parts, and start to make progress. And it's super fulfilling for everyone when they learn how to do it. So just stay the course, more milestones. It's one of those few times in EOS where I would say more is more. Every other time we say less is more, but this is more milestones. Just makes you smarter about your rock.
Nice. Yes, so mobile app right now, you can add it to your home screen. I wonder if you guys will really even be able to see my phone, but I've just added as a home screen icon on here. We have a help article that tells you how to do this. So I'll include this in the email when we're sending that out afterwards, but you can still have it on your phone. It can look like a normal app on here. You can see it other than my weather app.
Yeah.
But you can just click on that and it opens up. So you just need, if you're on iPhone, go to Safari, you can save it as a home screen icon.
Perfect.
Yeah. Let's see, complete a rock. Shouldn't you unarchive it so you can complete it and then show it in the new chart you're creating? So you really want it. So in the quarterly conversation annual review, before I let Jim go, I will clarify that pulls in archived rocks too. So it's only looking at the due date of the rock and pulling anything with that due date. The only thing that's excluded is if you completely deleted the rock.
Yeah, it's not deleted when it's archived. It's just archived. It's just not showing. It's still in the data sphere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and I think it when you get to your quarterly, it's for the team to decide whether the rock is done or not. If you're able to say, hey, I'm this far from done, and it sounds like a to-do to everyone, then everyone says, agrees, it's done. And that's why we like to have it in the quarterly and not, outside of it, because we're all looking each other in the eyes. So we all believe this is really done. Can we all trust each other? Yes, it's really done. This thing will get this extra little thing will happen the next week. We're not worried about that. What the intent of the rock was completed. We get to count that as a win.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't worry about the archiving part. That's archiving is right if it's done.
Yeah, and it definitely touches back on one of our earlier questions. Archive all your rocks when the quarter's up, and anything that wasn't done, make it a long-term issue, and you'll just reevaluate it at that time. But you want to have that incomplete rock in your archive just so that you have a record of it.
Because you'll get better. I promise. If you keep going, you'll get better.
Yeah. What percentage of clients are utilizing this for board/trustee meetings? That's a great question. And I would also love to know the percentage. Maybe I could figure that out for you guys and send it out. People are using it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know one of my clients is my nonprofit clients that also have boards make that part of their setup. Um, it isn't necessarily in the right, it's not, we don't have an owner's box, right? So that would not be
Right.
the place you really want it, but we just make it as a team, and it becomes part of what the um, and we also, do a lot of interesting things that isn't necessarily, this isn't an org chart, right? This is a accountability chart. And quite often, like with nonprofit boards, the board actually has accountabilities up to various teams too. So having those
Right.
people sit in those seats as well is, it's been actually helpful to help them understand what they're accountable for in the structure of the organization. But it's not uncommon at all. There's a multiple models for it. We don't have a specific model for how to make that happen. But
Great.
it
Yeah,
depends
I
on
think that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Just create it as a new team if you do want to do that. But yeah, people are doing it. And even if you're in a peer group, we actually let you have a free account if you're in a peer group and want to run peer group meetings within here. So
That's good. Yeah.
yeah, people definitely use it outside the normal, oh, this is just a departmental team. So lots to explore in that area.
All right.
Let's see. Currently in IDS, only one individual can choose 3 topics.
This is meeting sync, babe.
It is. And yeah, another fun announcement is we will be allowing multiple people to join a meeting. I'm hoping I get to test it out in the next 2 weeks or so from our team. So it's right around the corner of when we're hoping to release that. But that would essentially fix this issue where we're letting multiple people come in and interact and be a part of that meeting instead of just the one person. So more to come on that soon. And honestly, this is great. Great questions just to know like future topics that we should be touching on. Cause I think rocks is a big one. Running meetings is a big one. There's a lot of areas we can go with this kind
Yeah.
of product office hours concept.
Yeah, I'd say one on IDS, but we didn't refresh because we had things added. So I, didn't actually manage that very well, but that's
Yeah.
we'll figure it out. Okay, we really only have one more. Okay, good.
I think so. I guess I should archive and refresh one more time just to be sure. Who knows if Steven's been loading us up with more. New to-dos are factored into the completed percentage. Is that correct? It is only based on the to-dos due date.
Yeah.
So it's based on the to-dos original due date, meaning if you create it and then you change it, it doesn't matter what you changed it to, it's based on the original. And that's because we want to see if it wasn't done on time too. So yeah, it's just based on those dates you select for the conversation.
And this is another one of those parts of the 5 leadership abilities, that short-term predicting about what I can get done in a week, and do I take on too many to-dos and that stuff, and just keeping track of how you're doing as a team at being able to predict.
Yeah, exactly. I figured I'd archive mine here and then maybe head over and see if I have any more. Just a couple. Actually, we completed number 2 already. So 3 more. When one person has multiple seats, what's the best practice? So I was surprised this question hadn't come up until now. So it's, you're in a conversation and you can only choose one seat. I'll let you speak to this. I know Mark, has really been firm on, you're really reviewing that person as it pertains to that seat and not getting clouded with a lot of other stuff.
That's right. I mean, I think it's, let's first say that multiple seats is always an issue. It's always an issue. You can't, as a structure, as a long-term reality, hold multiple seats. That's not okay, because it's wonky like this, because you're dividing your time, you're dividing your head. So we want you to have one seat, and the structure should find a way for you to have one seat. Now, that said, very few entrepreneurial leadership teams or companies have everybody in just one seat. It just, any one time you can be off, but every seat has its own rocks, its own things it's accountable for. The seat itself has its roles, and you just need to be able to speak to how you're doing in that one seat.
Yeah.
Because quite often too, it's, hey, I'm good at both these things. Which one am I going to focus on, and which one am I going to delegate, right? And it comes down to, well, you know what, you seem to be doing really well on this one. Maybe let's delegate this stuff. Let's find a way to get rid of these things here. We're not maybe succeeding as well. So it is, but definitely they can be scheduled back to back, but they should be separate conversations.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did for mine. So right now I'm in 2 seats, and just as like a real world example, obviously like Jim said, not ideal, but it's where we are right now. So
Yeah.
just had, filled out 2 quarterly conversation forms, and you've just got those so that you can really think about how you're doing separately is helpful.
I mean, the fact that there's a seat on the accountability chart says that someone needs to own and love and be naturally in this thing. And so you really want to, so you want to think about it now in those terms. This is a role that needs to be embraced by someone and really mastered. And you really can't do it in 2 seats. So eventually you got to get to the place where both seats are being mastered. So by somebody.
Great answer. Let's see, when the agenda is customized for the level 10 meeting, is there a way to make notes in the added section? You can only add them before the meeting right now, so we can't edit it during the meeting. Definitely something that's been on my mind if we can actually allow for. So I've got it on my request list, Sue. I'll be sure to make sure that you're on that request too, so we can keep bumping it up. But essentially, just so everybody knows right now, when you're editing the level 10 meeting agenda, you can create a new section. And in that section, you can either put a link to a web page, so as long as it's an iframe friendly link, or you can just type in some notes. So you're typing in the notes and details when you're actually creating the section, as opposed to within the meeting itself.
Yeah, so I would love to hear what you're hoping to get done, because I think it's understanding how the use case is a little bit deeper would be really meaningful for us.
Definitely.
So if you can share that, please do.
And this is a great question to end on, honestly. Are there community boards to share best practices? Right now,
Are there any community boards to share best practices on 90?
We tried setting up a little user community ourselves. And so it's out there and it's running a bit, but we haven't advertised much. So maybe I can make that a bigger priority for myself this year, if we think it would be really valuable for our team to just even connect with other users. And there is also an EOS community. So if you go to the EOS Worldwide website, they have a community as well. So
yeah, this is called the Pulse, and so there are places, and there are some questions on there, but it's not robust yet. So
yes.
But Michelle, we'll be happy. Michelle Casey, we'll be happy to help you find one and maybe be an ambassador to make it more, because I think obviously there's plenty of questions people have and they want to be able to learn from each other. So
yep, definitely. I feel like I'm making those connections all the time. Just yesterday somebody was like, do you know any people using your system that it's a large manufacturing client? So I'm always trying to connect people and would love for you guys to be able to do that on your own as well. But I think that wraps us up. Maybe 90 minutes is the time for next time. Maybe I just don't talk as much at the beginning. So
yeah, certainly if you have any that kind of feedback, let us know. But it felt like this was all good stuff, and we collected questions that weren't really about the topic as well. So so right now we're fulfilling that community bulletin board function as well as teaching people about the specific stuff, which is just fine.
Yeah. Well, and so thank you guys all for joining. I don't have anything else for you. We'll get you the email recap of the session and include a couple links to valuable resources and content just based on what we talked about today. So reply to that. Let us know your feedback. Let us know what you want covered next time. I'm really excited to start doing these monthly. And Jim, thank you for letting me drag you into this. I really appreciate it.
Christine, it was always a pleasure to hang with you, and great to hear from the 90 customers out there. These are smart folks. It's always great fun.
Good. Well, thanks everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks everyone. Bye now.